Hey guys, this is going to be a video on the overview of how to install a on3 Performance 351 swap turbo kit into your 79 to 93 Fox body Mustang. I'm doing it on a carbureted version, so I'll be showing you my intercooler routing instead of what they use for fuel injection. So we'll start with that. Now, I used everything from the on3 kit except for two pieces, which you could actually have used one, but I decided to save it for another project because I had a piece that worked better. So the only piece I had to buy that didn't come with on3 kit is this 90 here, down off the turbo. So you run it down under the side, run the on3 90 off the end, and then here's where it gets a little bit more difficult. You're going to have to cut the 180 flange they have with the blow-off valve, cut it in half, cut it right after the weld, and that'll give your clamp something to hold on to with a little bit of meat into the core, out the other side. Now this is another piece that didn't come with the kit, but you could have used the long straight 90 that came with the kit, but you had to cut it up, and I had this Ford Power Stroke cheap 90 that I used, plus a little 2-inch piece in there. So if you do that, you're not going to have to use this if you're cutting the stainless one from on3. And then into the fender, you use this kinked piece that originally came down off the turbo with them. They want, because their routing, they had to come down off the turbo, around, and then into the front of the intercooler, and then out the passenger side. I didn't like that. But the piece they ran for that, I had actually, my car came with a hole in the driver's side fender, opposite the hole that's in the passenger side fender. So I used that for my pipe, and then all I need is a 3.5 inch to 3 inch reducer, and the intercooler piping will be done. So now let's talk about the actual installation of the kit. Now for me, the hardest part by a long shot was actually installing the downpipe. I did this whole install in my garage. No lift, no shop, barely any help. And I believe on3 wants you to put the downpipe in from the bottom of the car, which wasn't an option for me because my jack stands couldn't go high enough. So what I actually ended up doing was I took the motor mounts off, undid the bolts on the bell housing, and then I lifted the motor up a little bit more, pulled it forward, and was able to actually drop it in from the top, which works out fine. Then the issues I was having were I have ARP bolts for my headers, which ended up being a tiny bit too short. on3 actually sends you bolts to use with their turbo kit, and theirs were longer and worked a little bit better. I ended up using ARP on some and theirs on others, so that's a bit of a mixed bag. When I talk about clocking the turbo, it's rotating the hot and cold sides of your turbo so that your oil drain, if you see that down there, comes straight out of the bottom, and the feed line comes straight into the top. And your cold side is going to go obviously straight down out of that, and your hot side is going to be made up with the header. I recommend wrapping your headers, obviously, before you put them in the car, because it'll be a nightmare to wrap them afterwards. I'm planning on wrapping my downpipe as well, but I actually have to shorten it, and I'll show you that in a second. Another thing I recommend is on3 doesn't send you V-band gaskets, which aren't necessary per se, but they are quite helpful because V-bands seal up good, but not great. So you got your V-band here, you got a ball and socket there, and then another V-band on the bottom right there. And they both are 3-inch, so you can go to AutoZone, get a V-band gasket for like a Dodge diesel, and that'll seal up nicely. I'd also recommend wrapping this too, I just haven't gotten around to it. So let me show you why I have to shorten the downpipe. So the issue, I don't know if it's my motor mounts are shorter, like a lot shorter, but if you see there, the downpipe actually sits almost 3 inches lower than it should. So it's already grinding a flat spot on the maybe quarter mile I've driven this car. So that's something to keep an eye out for. I have solid motor mounts in my 351 that are 4302. So the theory is it shouldn't be sitting any lower, but maybe it is. So, you know, keep an eye out for that. Fabbed up a white pipe. Goes from 3.5 to 3 to 2, 2.5 out the back. Sounds pretty good. What else can I? Oil feed line, my routing. Let's see if I get it right. Comes right there out of the block. I'm adding a gauge fitting today from a nitrous -4 line. I guess I'll show you that here in a minute. Hope I can find it. And that's going to run, I ran mine up over the water pump, below the water neck, behind the alternator. Down and around, behind the turbo, out to the passenger side, and up and in the top. That was the most out of the way and convenient routing I could come up with. The other hard part, the other issues I was having were with on3's alternator thing. Short spacer on top, large spacer on the bottom, and then you're going to have another large spacer on the back of the alternator. That goes to the block. And then they've got this turnbuckle that they actually wanted you to use a little piece off the back, which then ran down to the top of the water pump. I decided that this way would work fine. What else? The stock Fox body upper radiator hose actually runs up and over, and it sits on top of the turbo. This is something I made up. It was just a little piece of stainless pipe and 2 hoses I had laying around. Works good for now. Now, as a carbureted car, well, throttle body injected, but carbureted intake, you could, in theory, come out of your passenger side hole using their crazy kink pipe. But my issues with it basically is that I am actually running a trunk mounted battery, so I'm running a lot of wiring through there, and the pipe they use actually end up running this way, and then they want you to run a 90 coupling into your intake, and I didn't like that. Didn't like how it looked. Don't like having to reduce it from my boost hat down to a 3-inch and an elbow. So I decided to run mine backwards. On3 Performance, they want you to use their turnbuckle as your belt tensioner, which works fine and dandy. I decided I'd rather just have a real tensioner, so I just built a little bracket that sits off the water pump, holds the tensioner for me, so my belt's nice and tight without having to deal with the turnbuckle. Which works out pretty well. So for your return line bung, On3 wants you to basically take a big metal punch, and hammer a hole through your oil pan, which I've seen people do with great results. because if you actually drill a hole and try and tap it, it'll be so thin that you'll have almost no bite, and I almost guarantee it'll leak eventually. I actually, since I built my motor on a stand, I actually ended up just welding my own bung in. As you can see there, that's the kind of the location of it. Because you want it above your oil level, so you're not having to, the turbo doesn't have to try and push oil through. So if you have the ability to, I would recommend pulling the oil pan and welding a bung in instead of trying to tap one in like on 3 watt. Oh, what else? Solid motor mounts. Did I get your shot? Solid blocks. In theory, should be that they would be as tall, if not taller, than a Fox 302 mount, but maybe I'm wrong. What's your input on that? Here's the wastegate. I'm going to run my line up through this hole here, my vacuum line. I might end up tapping the turbo for a boost line, since that's kind of what you want to do for your wastegate.